Hello guys and welcome back. So I have run the sim with the settings that we've set together, and this is the result that I get. And I wanted to show you guys how to debug this problem and why it started happening. And the primary reason for this is because we're doing something in the sim that is not really very clever, and that is we're copying a percentage of the density field into the divergence, which can cause it to expand. If it expands, the density is more. We have more density information. So the next frame, it's going to inject the density back into the sim. And the other reason why this has started happening now is because we increased the settings to these ones. I'm gonna lower this to 1. So we increased it to this, and we have more substeps between frames, which means there is more sampling of the density, and that can capture more information that gets copied to the divergence, and the sim will behave completely different. It's also very important to note that we have to always tweak using high-res settings when we getting to the final stage, or at least when we have everything set up, we have to increase the settings so they are closer to the final ones. But I'm not liking the idea of copying a part of the divergence into the a part of the density into the divergence. So I want to change that completely. And the other thing is I don't like using the same information that I'm injecting into the temperature into the divergence. So the diff temp, this guy, we're gonna use that just with temperature only. So the div underscore temp, I should probably rename that. So let's call this temp temperature. Okay, and I'm gonna dive inside this guy, paste it here, and then the advection, and then the gas calculate. We're gonna copy that temperature into there, and I'm not gonna do any of these guys. I'm not gonna use density or anything like that. I'm just gonna compute the length of the velocity and inject that into the temperature. And we're gonna create something new to use properly with the divergence. And the idea that I thought of is to use the same source. So right now, when we look at the density here, you can see the object is moving. These guys are moving, and I want to use that as and inject it into the divergence. But we don't want to copy the actual density, because the density is everything that has been emitted into the sim. So it will be everything included every frame, and I only want this part to be included in and copied into the divergence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where that information lives. I'm going to create a new field. I'm going to call this temp source, and inside this guy, inside the source field, there is a clear tab that is removing this field, and I don't want that. I don't want it to remove that field. And what's happening is basically every time we use one of these guys, it copies the imported data into something called source, but then it clears it out because it's a temp data. But I don't want that. I don't want it to remove it. So I'm going to add a merge node. I'm going to use a gas calculate, and while it's still being available, I'm going to copy it to my temp source. So I'm going to copy the source into my temp source and use the method add. And then I'm going to advect it as well. So we'll do the advection here. Okay, and then these guys are going to also delete the data, which we don't need at that point because we've done our processing here, and whatever happens afterward is we're not concerned with at this point. Okay, so let's take a look at this data. Here I'm gonna change this to import the temp source, and I want to take a look and see what we have. Let's turn off caching. Let's turn on caching and let's play a few frames. Okay, let's take a look. We have a temp source field, so let's take a look and see how that looks. Temp source, I'm going to increase this to 10. And if we play through, the first frame doesn't have any source, so it's full, everything is filled. And then as we play through, you can see it's actually a copy of the source. And this is much better to use because and copy into the divergence, because we're only going to be injecting this portion every frame. And for example here, it will cause this portion to expand. Next frame is going to cause this portion to expand, and so on and so forth. So we're going to copy that instead. And let's dive inside. And I'm going to move this. I don't need it here anymore. The post and pre-process doesn't really matter because it only changes the first frame, and once the loop goes in, the order doesn't really matter when it happens. So here we're going to inject the temp source. Sorry, we need to infect the temp source. And we're going to copy that into the divergence. Now let me make sure that everything is working. I'm going to wait for it to sim. Cool. And let's take a look. And let's just copy it without any animation, because the sourcing is going to stop after frame 17. We're not getting any expansion at the moment. So let's increase it even more. Sorry, this is wrong. Yeah, I need to type the name in the source field, which is the temp source. Sorry about that. Yeah, and now it's working. Cool, so let's set this back to 10. And now as the trail progresses, it's gonna expand its tail correctly, which is what we need. And then we can add our own nodes and everything else we've done before to the whole system again. If we wanted to break these using the velocity and all that stuff, everything is still available here, and we can use that. Let me just make sure that we're not causing any issues. Okay, cool. So everything looks correct. Let's hit play. And let's take a look at the first free frame so you can see it going. I'm going to move the source up. I'm going to move the ground so that it's at 0, 0. Because I want that collision to, so we see it how it reacts. And you can see now the trails is getting thicker at the bottom. It's also rising up because the buoyancy is high. So we're gonna lower that. Pardon me. We're gonna lower the buoyancy. Okay, I think it's getting there. And I'm gonna lower the velocity a little bit. I'm not so sure where this pump is coming from, this directional pump, so I'm gonna find that, where that's coming from. I'm gonna first turn this off completely, the velocity from the source, from the source volume. Cool, so we have some nice shapes now. And now the velocity, the temperature, and all the other fields are kicking in as well, which is working really nicely in this case. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go up to the sub level and take a look and see what we have. The first frame we're going to ignore, we can fix that later. Actually, we don't have to fix anything. I'm just previewing the temp source, which we shouldn't care about. And that's how it looks like, if you guys are curious. We can multiply it by the density, so it only shows up there. It's actually a very useful data, and we're going to use it later in upcoming weeks to create some more complex shading effect. Cool, I think it's working now. So what I'm going to do is, under this guy, I'm gonna lower the velocity max, because I think we're only isolating a certain part. This we don't need anymore, so I'm gonna delete completely. And this is good. Let's set this to 1. Okay, and let's lower this to 15. I think it's too much. And let's increase the buoyancy to 6 and see how that works. I think it's working really nice now. The trails could be longer, but I like the fact that we have yeah, I think it's working. I like the fact that we have a tip and then something behind it coming, so this is definitely working as expected now. Okay, we can actually visualize the temperature if we're interested in that, and let's copy this and let's set this to black body. Yeah, we'll leave those settings, these colors that I don't like, to be honest. Set this to 10. I'm gonna change this. Something like that. Cool, so we have our emission, and you can see the expansion happening, and then everything breaks off. Now, there is still a few things that I'd like to do, and potentially add more noise to this. And what I'm going to do is actually, let's do it here. So, you know what, I'm gonna sim this at a higher resolution, just interactively, and then we'll continue adding more details, because the next change I'm gonna do is probably going to change this drastically. So before we do that, I want to sim a version, and then we'll continue in the next video. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in a bit.